I discovered my girlfriend was secretly a millionaire pretending to be broke, so I gave her a taste of her own medicine. I'm a 31-year-old guy, making a living in a straightforward job, just enough to pay rent, stash a bit into savings, and enjoy occasional weekends away with friends. My circle is small but supportive. I've never been well off, but I'm comfortable, content with life's simple pleasures. Then, I met my girlfriend about a year ago. She seemed genuine, cheerful, and eager to share modest ambitions, talk of budgets and day-to-day challenges. I liked that she was so open about her supposed financial limitations. I never suspected it might be a carefully crafted act. We connected at a casual neighborhood event. She approached me first with an easy grin and struck up a conversation about local restaurants, complaining she couldn't afford fancy meals. Her frankness about money struggles resonated with me. I'd known that pinch too. Soon, we were swapping stories about how we both scoured thrift stores for bargains and avoided pricey outings. I found it refreshing. She didn't try to impress me with illusions of wealth. Or so I believed. Our dates stayed modest, picnics in a park, cooking simple dinners at my apartment, or hitting up discount movie nights. She'd often remark how nice it was that I didn't judge her for lacking funds, how relieved she felt not to keep up appearances of wealth. I felt sympathy, wanting to help ease any anxiety she carried over finances. She seemed grateful whenever I paid for small extras, like an ice cream cone or a shared Uber ride. Every time, she insisted she'd repay me as soon as I get a better job. I used to wave that off, telling her it wasn't a big deal. Over the months, we got more serious. She insisted we keep things low-key, never going to pricier restaurants or big concerts. Initially, I liked her down-to-earth style. But I noticed something odd. She'd occasionally wear a piece of jewelry that looked suspiciously upscale for someone tight on money, like a watch that I recognized as a high-end brand. When I teased her about it, she made an excuse that it was a vintage family heirloom. Another time, I saw her slip out a phone that was brand new, top of the line, replaced from her older one. She brushed it off, calling it a gift from an aunt. My curiosity flickered, but I didn't push. Things started to shift around the time we discussed possibly living together. She was all for moving into my modest place, talking about how it'd help her save. But it was my casual mention of budgeting for groceries, utilities, the usual, that caused her to nod a bit too eagerly. She'd talk about how every penny mattered, how she needed to be extra frugal. Meanwhile, her nonchalant references to certain designer labels or exotic travel spots popped up. If she slipped up and mentioned an expensive brand, she'd quickly correct herself. Oh, that's just something I read about, not that I can afford it. A bigger crack appeared the day I found a letter in her bag. I wasn't snooping. Her bag had fallen off the couch, its contents spilling. While gathering the items, I glimpsed a bank statement peeking out. My eyes snagged on a figure that had more zeros than I'd ever seen in my account. An investment portfolio, maybe? The name on the letter was definitely hers, but my mind reeled. Could it be a mistake? A joint account with a relative? Feeling uneasy, I quietly placed it back, uncertain how to confront her, or if I even should. That piece of evidence gnawed at me. Could she be well off while feigning poverty? The puzzle made me recall the watch, the phone, her suspicious excuses. Perhaps she'd crafted a persona of the struggling girlfriend to benefit from my generosity, or maybe it was deeper than that. I decided not to jump to conclusions. Instead, I began subtly observing her behavior, looking for more clues. The next time we shopped for groceries, I noticed she had a surprising knack for picking out items without fretting over cost, yet she'd sigh theatrically about how pricey everything is. If I offered to pay, she never refused. Cautiously, I tried to glean more from conversation. She'd mention a rich friend who took lavish vacations, but her details never matched up if I pressed. She'd get cagey, deflect, or change subjects abruptly. My suspicion intensified. Finally, I felt I had to confirm the truth. If she was lying about her finances, what else might she be hiding? And if so, why? I decided to do a bit of quiet research. A friend of mine worked in an administrative role at a bank in the next city. Though no joint accounts or detailed transactions were involved, he wasn't going to share any confidential info. But I asked him if he recognized the letterhead I saw from her bag or if he'd heard of that investment firm. He said it was a well-known, high-tier portfolio management company, only used by folks with substantial assets. That alone suggested she was far from broke. My heart pounded. Part of me felt betrayed. Had she been conning me for months, milking my sympathy? Still, I craved certainty. I found a bank statement again in her bag one afternoon when she left it momentarily. This time, I allowed myself a brief but clear look. The figures on that account were staggering, far beyond anything a typical working-class person would have, especially one claiming to struggle. She wasn't just comfortable, she was loaded. The realization stung. Why pretend to be poor? Did she get a thrill from me paying for everything? Or was it some test of sincerity? I planned to confront her, but timing was crucial. We'd already begun discussing future plans, like traveling somewhere cheap or maybe renting a bigger place once she got on her feet. The more I thought about it, the more furious I became at her deception. She'd let me treat her to dinners, pay for groceries, buy little gifts, all while apparently sitting on a mountain of wealth. Another angle dawned on me. Perhaps she was assessing if I was a gold digger or if I'd love her even if she were broke. But she never hinted it was a test. Instead, she complained constantly about struggling. Something didn't add up. In the midst of my swirling anger, a petty part of me wanted to give her a taste of her own medicine, to let her know I knew she was wealthy, but see how far she'd push the poor little me narrative first. So I played along, feigning ignorance. I continued letting her spin sob stories about how expensive rent was, how her meager paycheck barely covered necessities, how it was so kind of me to pick up her share of utility bills. Meanwhile, I discreetly tested her. I proposed a small trip, claiming we should each chip in half. She pretended to cringe, bemoaning how she had no spare funds. I nodded sympathetically, biting my tongue to keep from exposing what I knew. The tension in me soared, but I managed a calm facade. Then, out of nowhere, she started dropping hints about wanting to move forward in our relationship. She'd mentioned that if we got engaged or married, we'd unify our resources, and I could help her fully, like paying off her imaginary debts. My blood burned. The nerve. She was basically hinting that I'd be financially responsible for her while she stashed away her massive fortune. That's when I decided on my revenge. Not something malicious or illegal, but a well-deserved reality check. She needed to face consequences for her manipulation. The opportunity arose one weekend. She insisted we go to a fancy shopping district, claiming she just wanted to window shop. Once there, she drifted into a high-end boutique, eyeing clothes with a longing expression. She'd sigh and say, "I wish I could afford something like that." I responded with faux sympathy, all while knowing she could buy the entire store if she wanted. Just as she was about to step out, a store clerk recognized her. My girlfriend paled, quickly tugging me away. I found that curious, like she didn't want me seeing she might be a known customer. Later that evening, in my apartment, I confronted her gently. I said I found it strange how the store clerk recognized her if she rarely shopped in fancy places. She fumbled for an excuse, claiming the clerk resembled someone from high school. Her eyes darted, voice unsteady. The lie was plain. I pressed on, mentioning I'd seen an investment statement in her bag. Accidentally, I claimed, but I glimpsed enough to sense she wasn't broke. At first, she denied it, stammering about old inheritance left over from a deceased aunt, swiftly disclaiming it as not real money. But I refused to let it drop. Eventually, her shoulders sagged, and she admitted she was quite wealthy. She'd grown up with money, her parents had a massive estate, and she'd inherited a substantial trust fund on her 25th birthday. By the time we met, she was already a millionaire. Shock hammered my chest, even though I'd suspected it. I demanded to know why the elaborate ruse. She sullenly confessed she'd had bad experiences with men who wanted her for her money, so she tried the opposite approach, pretending to be poor to see if men truly cared about her. "You're not the first guy I tested," she added, as though that justified the lie. I fired back that she went far beyond a simple test. She let me pay bills, foot dinners, while spinning sob stories. That wasn't just testing sincerity. It was manipulative. She shrugged, claiming I'd passed the test, showing I was generous. She insisted everything was fine now. We could proceed with the relationship properly, as if she expected me to just laugh it off and continue. My mind reeled at the betrayal. She'd exploited my kindness, letting me worry about finances, all while she had the means to help or at least pay her own share. She tried turning the tables, saying I should be flattered she'd chosen me, that I was more genuine than her past suitors. I told her that was twisted logic. She never gave me the chance to love her for who she was if I didn't even know who she was. Furious, I marched into the kitchen, gulping water to steady my nerves. She followed, insisting we could fix this. She promised she'd repay me for every little expense. But it wasn't about the money. It was about trust. The entire foundation of our relationship was built on her orchestrated lie. I decided at that moment I'd carry out the second part of my plan, giving her a taste of her own medicine. I'd let her believe I'd forgiven her, but in reality, I'd show her how it felt to be lied to about finances. So I took a breath, put on a calm face, and told her I'd try to move forward if she gave me some space. She exhaled with relief, hugging me, claiming I'd never regret it. Meanwhile, my mind was racing. I wasn't about to remain with a con artist who saw people as playthings for her trust experiments, but I'd enjoy letting her sweat, letting her see a glimmer of retribution. Over the next few weeks, I turned the tables. I told her I'd run into money trouble, exaggerating some familial expense, hinting that I needed a chunk of cash quickly. She tensed, unsure how to respond. I asked if she could possibly cover some of my rent this month, just a small help. She grew uncomfortable, but tried not to reveal her wealth. She made excuses about not having enough, that she was still struggling. It was comedic, seeing how she kept up her broke facade despite my direct ask. She had no idea I'd read her bank statement referencing hundreds of thousands of dollars. As I continued this charade, dropping bigger and bigger financial crises, I watched her squirm. She'd mumble about how she wished she could help, then redirect the conversation. One day, I confronted her sweetly. I know you're not actually broke. You told me you were a millionaire. Why not help me out a bit, since you said you'd repay me for all the times I paid for you? She panicked, rummaging for an excuse. My funds are locked in investments, or I can't access them right now. She squirmed, eyes darting. It was a small, petty satisfaction, seeing her taste her own manipulative brew. But I'd had enough. My scheme, while petty, proved how relentlessly she'd cling to deception, even when cornered. One night, I sat her down and told her the game was over. We're done, I said quietly. I can't remain with someone who manipulated me from day one. You lied about being broke to see if I'd love you for you, but you took advantage, letting me pay for everything. And even after being caught, you're lying to avoid helping me now. I'm leaving. She erupted in denial, tears streaming, claiming she was just protecting herself from gold diggers. I retorted that was no excuse for mooching off me or guilt-tripping me into covering costs. She tried another angle, promising full honesty going forward, even volunteering to show me her statements. But it was too late. The damage was done. I told her I'd pack her stuff or mine, whichever was easier. She sobbed, threatened that I'd regret losing someone with real money who could have given me a lavish life once the test ended. But that only cemented my choice. She truly believed people were pawns for her to assess. As I parted ways, she spewed a few final barbs about my lack of ambition. She implied I'd never find a partner of her caliber again. I smirked, ironically thinking how I'd prefer sincerity over her brand of wealth any day. She tried to salvage it at the last moment, offering to pay me back double. I refused. This was bigger than money. She toyed with my trust and sense of reality. I left her standing in the living room, arms folded, tears on her cheeks. I felt no guilt, only relief. Over the next few days, she bombarded me with texts, flipping between furious accusations and pathetic pleas. I blocked her. My mind found peace in the knowledge that I'd stood up for myself, refusing to let her manipulative game define our relationship. Some acquaintances who heard a partial story were stunned. She was a millionaire all along? People asked if I was crazy for walking away from a wealthy partner. I said I'd prefer a broke but honest companion over a manipulative millionaire who saw relationships as experiments. A few weeks later, rumors circulated that she'd found a new target, or maybe a new friend circle. Good riddance. I sometimes reflect on how she must be spinning the story, presumably telling them I'm a user or some nonsense. But the truth stands. She created a false persona, stole from my wallet in the sense that she allowed me to pay for everything while she was flush with cash, then refused to come clean until I forced her hand. I never pressed charges or anything like that. There was no official theft, just moral betrayal. But the sense of betrayal stung. For a while, I questioned if I was gullible, if I'd missed red flags. Ultimately, I realized I believed her because I prefer to see good in people. That's not a flaw. She exploited my kindness, but I take comfort knowing I parted ways with dignity. My small revenge, pretending I needed funds, only revealed her hypocrisy further. Now, my life is simpler and, ironically, more comfortable. I manage my finances for myself, with no illusions or manipulative partner complicating things. Some friends tease that if I'd played along, I'd have reaped her fortune eventually. But I'd never want wealth rooted in deception and cruelty. I'm not a saint, but I'd rather earn my stability or find a partner who shares mutual honesty and real love. So that's how it went down. My girlfriend was secretly a millionaire pretending to be broke. Once I uncovered her lie, I let her have a taste of her own manipulative medicine before ending it. She tried to salvage the relationship with promises of money, but trust was already shattered. I walked away, secure in the knowledge that I'd never regret escaping a relationship built on pretense and cunning. If she's out there sipping champagne in her penthouse, so be it. I may not be rich, but at least I live free of her twisted games.